You know what's funny? I used to always think these symbols on Shusui's sheath were the peace symbol. You know, like that symbol that became really popular during the Vietnam War. But then I looked it up recently. I'm like, that one has an extra line through it. And I'm like, well, what the hell are these things? And then I just realized, I think they're supposed to be cherry blossoms, right? Or like sakura petals or something. I don't know. That's something I just realized. A Mandela effect? You know, I don't know. That's neither here nor there. I don't know if you guys know this, though, but this arc is going to be coming up in One Piece rather soon, you know, after Tautland, after we have a brief flyover of Reverie. We're going to be getting this arc, and it's going to be called Wano, and it's going to be amazing, and there's going to be badass samurai, and Zoro's going to be cutting no less than 3 people down, and then you're going to have Law using his shambles shit, and then Kinemon and Kanjuro and Raizo are going to do all their samurai/ninja shenanigans, and there's the Daimo, and there's going to be Kaido, and everything else that rhymes with Do, and it's going to be crazy. So, how hyped are you for that? Because, as you can tell, pretty hyped here. Pause this video right now. Comment below how hyped you are. Yeah, I mean, I'm pumped. I'm really pumped. I mean, this is something that Oda has been building up for years. You know, Oda's always been a big fan of, like, old school samurai movies, and obviously he lives in Japan, so when we get to Wano, a lot of inspiration is going to be taken from those, you know, those sources. A lot of references to samurai movies, a lot of references to his home country. We've even already kind of seen this in certain cover pages that Oda has done. He draws the Straw Hats in, like, traditional, like, feudal Japanese attire, you know, around the same time period that Wano is going to be based off of. Also, something you have to keep in mind here is that every little island in One Piece, Oda kind of takes references from certain regions. Like Thriller Bark, I think it was pretty obvious that he took a lot of inspirations from, like, you know, Transylvania and, like, certain horror movies and stuff like that. Dressrosa had references to, like, Spain. Then you had the Colosseum, which is kind of like ancient Rome. So he takes references from various cultures and all that stuff, and Japan is going to be the reference here. So let's get right into it. 5 things that need to happen in Wano Kuni. Number 5, we need a lot more character development for Kinemon, Kanjuro, Momonosuke, and Raizo. I think a lot of people are fair in assuming that these characters are going to be very prominent in the arc, probably going to be part of the main cast when we finally get there. It's their home country. It's the whole reason that they went out traveling at Oden's behest. They try to, like, you know, fulfill Oden's dream, which is to open the borders of Wano. That's their ultimate goal. So they are going to be very prominently featured. And I'm not just talking about fights, although I think that's a given. I want to see more than just one fight, with Kinemon especially, because Kinemon has had the most build-up, because we've known him the longest, ever since Punk Hazard. But also, you know, he was set up as Foxfire Kinemon, and he has the ability to, like, you know, swing his sword so fast it ignites. And we also have his Devil Fruit, which we don't know the name of yet. His magic clothing fruit or whatever. You know, so I definitely want to see multiple fights with Kinemon. But you know, the other characters I can get by with, like, maybe just one solid fight from, like, Kanjuro and Raizo and those characters. But more than just fights, I want to see more development from their characters. I want to see, you know, where they fit into Wano. They are apparently the samurai that, well, in Kanjuro and Kinemon's case, the samurai that were honor-bound to serve Oden. But how would that work out now? Because Oden was apparently killed by Kaido and the Shogun. I say apparently because it's not really sure yet on what happened with him. You know, Oda could always throw us for a loop and, like, oh no, he wasn't actually dead. He just went into hiding or something. But how would the climate be with the Kozuki clan currently? I'm sure the people of Wano are kind of maybe being oppressed by the Shogun and Raizo, right? I mean, not the Shogun and Kaido right now. So, you know, they might not hate the Kozuki clan, but because out of threat for what Kaido and his men might do to them, they might have to reject them away from the land. Like, you have to lay low for a little while so no one notices them. Samurai are just, you know, they're very honorable, you know, they're very honorable caste system, you know? They're supposed to, like, obey their lords and all that stuff. And if Wano is a country that's made up of these samurai, it's interesting to how that dynamic would work. You have this, like, this shogun who's easily corrupted, and then you have Kaido, who's one of the Yonko. Like, what level of influence do they have on the country itself? And even if they're, like, tyrannical, let's say they did the exact opposite of Doflamingo. Doflamingo was, you know, he was an evil dude, but he kind of played the field, and he knew how to run a country and get the people to like him. So let's say Kaido and the Shogun aren't doing that. They're just going full-on oppression, you know, like, I am your ruler, you're gonna listen to me. But it goes against everything that the samurai stand for. So I would assume there'd be some form of revolution, some form of resistant movement there that maybe, like, Kinemon and Kanjuro could become part of, as long as, you know, along with, like, Zoro and Law, because they're with them as well as Inurashi. So, yeah, I could see that going down there. And then you get to Raizo, who's a flippin' ninja. I want to know how that works, you know, because, you know, in historical context, the ninja and the samurai, they didn't get along very well. Just to give you a basic history lesson, and I did a whole video about, like, Wano, kind of like another video talking about it, just like the general concept of how Wano might be set up when you compare it to, like, feudal Japan. The samurai were, like, their own little caste system, right? And they had their own little class, and they obeyed the higher lords, and they were basically, like, the top warriors of the upper class, like the hired arms, basically. And they would have all the best armor and all the best swords, and they would train day and night for combat and all this stuff. And then you had the vast majority of feudal Japan, which was the farming class, you know, the peasants, so to speak. You know, they're the ones that made up over 90% of the population, yet held so little power. Eventually, you know, there's no way that a farm boy was going to be able to take down a trained samurai that has the best swords, the best armor, and all the know-how in order to fight. So what the farm people had to do, that sounds kind of offensive. What the peasants had to do, that's so much better, is they had to, you know, think of underhanded tactics, how to attack. So that's how they came up with things like the black egg, which was this thing. It was an egg. They would, you know, suck out the yolk, crush up glass so that it was like dust, and various things they would cram in there, like, you know, various spices and things, and then they would throw it. Slams into a samurai's helm. You know, it's an armored helm. There's no eyewear protection at this point, so it would shred their eyes. You know, they would have things like that, like a lot of modified farming equipment. Like they would take a sickle, like a scythe they would use to till the fields, and they would whip it up on a chain, and there you go. You got your Kusarigamas, you know, stuff like that. They would dress in, not really black. They would dress in like more darkish blue to be under cover of night, because you figure if you're a ninja and you got to attack like a castle or something, you have to still be able to see, you know, night vision goggles don't exist yet, so you gotta pick a night that has the full moon so you can actually attack the castle, but, you know, pitch dark against that might actually stand out, so you're gonna wear like a dark blue. So Raizo actually has the outfit down a little bit there. That is actually historically accurate, that he's not wearing black even though he's a ninja, so there you go. I'm sorry, I was going on and on about ninjas and samurai and history and all that. Sorry, I have a little problem with that. The point is, though, ninjas and samurais, they didn't really get along. They weren't really working together. And knowing Oda, I think that he will definitely mention this. You know, what's the story with Raizo and his backstory and everything? Probably going to be depressing, but, you know, how did he learn ninjutsu? Because that's something that no one else can do. I mean, I'm assuming it might be because of a devil fruit. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Kanjuro and Kinemon have one. Even Momonosuke has one now, so sure, I guess Raizo has the Nin no Mi. The Naruto fruit. Hey, it's Oda here. He was good friends with Kishimoto. He would totally do something like that. No. The way that Oda would do this, if there really was like a ninja fruit, he would show the fruit and it would have like the design for like Konoha as the spiral pattern for the fruit. That would be something Oda would totally do. Don't think that he wouldn't. But yeah, that's just something I want to see in general. More development for these guys, as well as some good battles and how the dynamic of Wano, how that whole thing shakes down there. So that'll be really cool to see. So number 4 is going to be all focused on Zoro. Our man, the pirate hunter. All right. So we got a lot of things going on with Zoro right now. You know, some people have actually come forward and thought, hey, maybe Zoro has, like, origins on Wano. Maybe he was, like, born there at one point. Now, I personally don't believe in that, although I do have some sort of connection with his master, Koshiro, that was his name, who was Kuina's father and trained him at the dojo. There's some similarities there that I'm thinking, like, maybe Koshiro was maybe from Wano, but I don't think Zoro was from Wano. But even with that not being the case, even if you want to disregard that, we still have Zoro being the swordsman, obviously, who uses katanas, which is the weapon that's going to be primarily featured by samurai in Wano. But then we also have this little number here. The black sword, Clear Autumn Water, Shusui, that was given to him by Ryuma on Thriller Bark. And this is a sword that was wielded by the country's, like, famous warrior. before he died, and he was laid to rest with this sword. And I guess Hogback or Moria at one point must have arrived on Wano and must have grave robbed it. I mean, I kind of want to see that story. I'm imagining Moria and Hogback on Wano, and I'm just like, how did they manage that? How did they manage to grave rob? I mean, I guess they had Absalom with them. I mean, with his invisibility powers, I guess it would be easy enough. But anyway, they robbed Ryuma's grave. They took his corpse, reanimated it on Thriller Bark, and then they also have, with Brook's Shadow, and then they also had the sword. And Zoro defeated Ryuma in a fair fight. Ryuma gave him the sword willingly. But we saw when Kinemon, laid his eyes that Zoro had Shusui, Kinemon was pissed. He was like, you robbed us of our country's pride and joy. And he's like, no, you don't understand, man. You don't get it, guy with a top knot. There was this island that was really a ship, and there was this guy shaped like a giant onion, and he can bring people back from the dead or something. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention. I didn't really fight the guy directly all that much, but apparently he could bring the dead back, and he brought back your samurai hero Jesus person, and I fought him, but it's cool because he gave me his sword. It was a fair fight, so I'm sure maybe Kinemon understands after Zoro probably gave him somewhat of that explanation. But when he's walking around Wano, and Zoro tends to get lost a little bit, I could totally see him, like, hey, Zoro, just go down there and fetch us some water, and then he ends up on the other side of town, and he's walking around, and all of a sudden some samurai step out in front of him, like some samurai Champloo, like, Mugen-looking guy with a scruff, and he's like, hey, man, that sword you have there looks kind of familiar, and Zoro's like, ah, shit. So, Shusui definitely needs to play a role here, even to the point, and many of you might not like it where I'm going with this, Zoro might actually return Shusui to Wano. He might actually give it back to the people that live there, because this is their national treasure, which was kind of stolen from them. And Ryuma did give it to Zoro. And hey, here's an idea. Ryuma's descendants. We might run into a descendant of Ryuma, like his great-great-grandson or something, and he might look kind of similar to him. Ryuma is actually based on a character that appeared in a previous one-shot that Oda did before One Piece called Monsters. I would seriously recommend you go read it, only for the fact that there's this panel that features Ryuma slicing a dragon's f***ing head off. So, pretty cool. But yeah, maybe we're gonna see like Ryuma's descendant who looks a lot like him, like from that Monsters one shot. Maybe Oda just wants to draw him like that again. And then he meets Zoro, and then he tells him all about Shusui, and then maybe he like, okay, well my ancestor gave that sword to you, so I'll let you have it, or something like that. But even if Zoro does give up Shusui, even if he does return it to like its proper resting place, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because going also with Wano, this is something else I wanted to mention, number 3, it's swords galore. Swords, 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 and more swords. Do you remember back in Logtown when we got introduced to Tashigi and Zoro was shopping in Ippon Matsu's shop, and we were going on this whole thing about how there's different sword classes, like different Meito grades? I made a whole different video about that. That video actually did fairly well. It got some decent hits, so you want to go check that out there. Just going into like the Wazimono and Owazimono and Ryuwazimono grade swords, and the different numbers there are. I love that concept, and they just kind of stopped it. It continued a little bit into Alabasta when Tashigi got back the sword Kashu from Mr. 11. So it's referenced every now and then. We know that Mihawk's sword is one of the great Ryu Owazimono swords, like that are like the supreme grade. There's only 12 in the world. But aside from that, the whole sword ranking Meito grade thing doesn't get brought up all that much. It has to happen in Wano. If there's ever a time where you need to bring this concept back, it is here, Oda. You need to bring back this concept. So I hope we get names for like Kinemon. Well, Kinemon's sword is, I think, just called like the Foxfire, right? Or maybe that's just his epithet. His title is Foxfire. But I want to see the names of these weapons, and I also want to see. This is the perfect spot to include the other Katetsu swords. So, Zoro obviously has Sandai Katetsu, Katetsu the Third. And that's the third, in the line of the Katetsu swords. The first one, Shodai Katetsu, is in the same class as Mihawk's is, and the second generation, Nidai Katetsu, is in the same class as Zoro's Wado Ichimonji. So then you have Sandai Kitetsu, which is like 2 classes lower than that. So yeah, I mean, if there's ever going to be a time where you're going to include, people have hypothesized that Shiryu it actually possesses one of the other Kitetsus, which given Shiryu, that would make perfect sense. If it was like Nidai Kitetsu or something, and then maybe Shodai Kitetsu is on Wano. So if he's gonna give up one of his swords, or even if Zoro's not gonna give up Shusui, but if he's maybe gonna trade up the Kitetsu, I want to see Zoro get another sword. I want to see Zoro get Shodai Kitetsu before the end of the story. That's what I'm aiming at right now. All right, maybe you have different thoughts. Maybe you think the Z-Dog is all good to go with the swords he's got right now. But I at least want to see him trade up. Not to say that the Kitetsu's going to get broken, although it could. But maybe he'll find the Shodai Kitetsu and he'll trade up for that or some such. He's got to keep the Wado because that's his sword, that Kunin gave him. He has to keep that one. But Shusui, I mean, if there's ever a time to give away Shusui and trade up with another sword, this would be Wano. If there was ever a time to introduce the Shodai or Nidai Kitetsus and Zoro gets that one in replacing the Sandai Kitetsu, this would also be the perfect time to introduce that. So, sword galore. I also want to see maybe even Smoker or Tashigi get on this, because Tashigi's also a sword nerd. She's sword girl. So, obviously, if if Smoker and Tashigi played a role in this arc, I'm not saying they will, but I want to see it, because, Tashigi would also be well at home in Wano, although Wano exists as a country separate from the world government, so I don't think they would feel really comfortable with the Marines docking their ships. Not to say that won't stop Smoker and Tashigi from entering the island, but if they do that, they're going to have to do it undercover, which has its own kind of setup to being interesting. Smoker and Tashigi actually going in kind of like how a pirate has to do it, because they wouldn't be able to just to dock their ship and land at the island. So yeah, that's pretty neat there. Also, something else with swords is that Law's sword. Law's sword, it's not a ranked sword. It doesn't have a Meito grade, but its name is Kikoku. I'm probably butchering that horribly, but it means demon's cry or demon's wail, and it's a cursed blade. So Law's on the island too. I'm just saying, you could throw something in there with that's the cursed demon sword. Or hey, you have a cursed demon sword too, Zoro. What's with all you travelers with the demon swords? And hell, I would be cool with, an entire chapter with just talking about swords. They go to a sword shop, and we have this master, blacksmith that works at Wano, and he's just I know that sword, here's the history behind it. I know those swords, here are the histories behind it. I would be cool with just an entire chapter just devoted to just focused on exposition around the swords that Law and Zoro have. That I'd be perfectly fine with that. So, number 2 is going to be about Momonosuke and Oden, the backstory there. So look, I don't think Oden's dead. We haven't seen a body, we haven't really even seen an image of Oden. All we saw from it was that Momonosuke and Kinemon, they were remembering what happened. Apparently Kaido or the Shogun was boiling Oden alive, get it? Oden noodles and whatever, and so he was laughing about that, ha ha ha, it's like a thing of Oden noodles. And then you have Momonosuke and Kinemon there crying the death of our lord, and you're making fun of it. That could mean any number of things. That could mean that Momonosuke and Kinemon were in hiding, and they just overheard what they thought was the death. They might not have actually witnessed it firsthand. They might not know. I think that Oden is going to be alive. If that's the case, I want to know how this is all going to shake down with the Kozuki clan. And, Momonosuke being the heir and everything like that. I think we're going to have a really big moment with Momo in this arc. I know up to this point, Momo's been nothing more really than just kind of like a whiny kid with the artificial devil fruit power to turn into a dragon. That's neat. But let's be honest here, the most prominent thing that Momo has really done up to this point in the series is grope Nami and Robin's boobs and rub his face in the... Damn son of a fucking kid. Anyway, and we had the moment on Zoe where he's I'm the heir, but I think he hasn't really had his shining moment yet. And I don't think a lot of people really care a lot about Momo at the point, but I think there's going to be a moment in Wano where we really need to see that. We need to see Momo declaring, I'm the heir of this country, and you will do what I say, or I know what I'm going to do, or I'm going to save my dad, or something some big epic moment where he kind of rallies all the samurai of Wano together, yeah, damn straight, young heir, we'll do this. I want to see that. I want to see the thing with Oden, or even if Oden really is dead, I want to still see some elaboration on that. I want to see a flashback with Momo and Oden. And I know that Momonosuke didn't actually go to Wano with this group. I'm aware of that. He chose to stay on Zou so he can kind of figure out the connection between him and Zunisha. So, you know, I still think Momo has to appear in the arc. I mean, it's going to be a long arc, and he's on Zou. So I could totally see a moment where like Zunisha arrives at Wano, and he gets off and gets there. So that's what I'm talking about there. But even without Momonosuke being in the arc, like at its initial stages, we could still have flashbacks with Oden and him growing up and everything like that. So that's what I really want to see. And there was also that moment where where Momonosuke, and, you know, there was also that moment where Momonosuke mentioned that he met Roger at one point, and a lot of people were, like, curious, like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense, because Roger, he wouldn't have been born yet. I think it's possible he might have been confusing Roger for Ace, because we know Ace went to Wano at one point and made that's how he learned how to make, like, the Casa hat for oars. So maybe, like, when Momonosuke would have been, like, 3 or 4 years old, he could barely remember it, that's when he met Ace and confused him for Roger. So yeah, there's also some theories that Momonosuke is like this ancient weapon, so he's a lot older than he looks. I think that's kind of like, I think that's, you know, that's Shirahoshi's thing. I mean, with the ancient weapons don't all have to be people. One of them is a giant battleship, Pluton. One of them is a mermaid princess, Shirahoshi. The last one, Uranus, it could be Zunisha. I don't think it's Zunisha. I think it's something to do with the moon, like a sky weapon, because Uranus is the Roman god of the sky. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with Momonosuke. I think Momonosuke is just somebody that can just hear the voices, and that's all that really is there. He's important, but he's not ancient weapon important, if that makes sense. And finally, the number one thing I want to see in Wano, of course, are the main enemies. We have the Shogun, who is apparently the ruler of Wano for all intents and purposes. There is a rank that's higher, the Emperor, but going once again into feudal context, the Emperor is more of just a figurehead, not actually having real power, and it's the Shogun that's there is going to be an Emperor. You bet your bacon there's going to be an Emperor of Wano, but I'm assuming he might either be this really naive, like, it might be a little kid, it might be this doddering old dude that's like, no, he doesn't really... So it might be somebody just being manipulated by the Shogun, but we're probably going to get to see an Emperor at some point. The Shogun himself is probably going to be this really, I'm imagining this really buff dude, kind of like Kaido, maybe not quite as big, but like the really buff dude, top knot, maybe he's got the tattoos, got this giant sword, maybe he's the one that has Shodai Katetsu, like, if anybody would have it, you know, Shogun of Wano Country having the most bloodthirsty sword in existence, makes perfect sense to me. And then you have Kaido properly himself, who is an ally with the Shogun. And this is going to be the arc similar to how we found out all about Big Mom with Totland. This is going to be the arc focused around Kaido, getting to know about him. So we're probably going to get to see a little flashback with Kaido. We're going to get to see his whole deal. What does he have a devil fruit? You know, how is he so freakishly strong? How can he not die? You know, we're going to get stuff like that. But that's, once again, stuff that just needs to happen. I would be fine if they just went all kingdom with it and had like a few chapters where just they're in the palace, like Kaido and the Shogun are just discussing warfare, you know, and how to do all this thing. I know One Piece isn't quite the same as Kingdom and how like battles are planned out and everything. With Kingdom, it's much more elaborated, much more methodical with like how the armies are laid out. But I would be happy with just seeing like Kaido and the Shogun sit down for sake and they discuss battle strategies or whatever. That would be pretty boss. So yeah, and one more thing before I go. Those are the 5 main things I want to see. But one thing I will mention is really quick with Koshiro, who is Zoro's mentor, the one ran the dojo in the East Blue that taught Kuina and Zoro, you know, how to use a sword. Like I said, in One Piece, Oda tends to focus on certain islands with, like, certain cultural references, you know? Oda's from Japan, but there's a lot of islands where you don't really see people dressing like traditional Japanese, you know? That's not how it goes. Some islands, people are dressing more Western than others, you know, whatever. But then you have the East Blue. And it's like, you know, where Luffy's from, the Goa Kingdom, where Usopp's from, Syrup Village, where Nami's from, Kokoyashi. You know, they all have pretty just, you know, more Western kind of the way they dress. Like Usopp wears freaking overalls for hell's sake. But then we get to Zoro's little dojo, Koshiro's dojo, where he teaches people how to use swords, and it's super Japanese. It's super Japanese in how they dress and the way they fight. They use katanas. I'm just saying, like, Koshiro could have been from Wano, and then he took the teachings that he learned. He could have been a samurai from Wano, and he took the teachings, and he left. He also has connections with the Revolutionary Army, so that might maybe why he left. And then maybe eventually arrived in the East Blue, and then opened up his dojo, and he, of course, taught these traditional Japanese, or I guess these traditional Wano customs to his students, which is why Zoro wears, you know, the Japanese attire, you know, and uses the katana because Koshiro passed that on to him. So yeah, I think it's possible that Koshiro would have a definite connection to Wano. I don't think Zoro does. I don't think it's like this big reveal like, oh, we're gonna find all about Zoro's parents and Zoro's past on Wano. Like, Oda just did that with Sanji. I don't think he would do the exact same thing for Zoro right after. You know, I mean, we just found out about Sanji's long-lost parents in history. Now we find out about Zoro's long-lost parents in history. I don't think he's going to do that. I think I'll be rehashing a little bit too quick there. But anyway, yeah, that's just wanted to bring that up one thing before I go. But anyway, yeah, so you guys comment below on what you guys want to see from the upcoming Wano arc, why you guys are pumped for it, and what do you think about Zoro maybe getting a new sword? What do you think about Momonosuke and Kinemon and the other samurai, and Raizo the ninja, Kaido the shogun, who's the emperor? You know, I'm just brimming with ideas. This is going to be so much fun. I look forward, well, Law Tekking looks forward to talking all about this with you next year once we get into Wano proper. If it doesn't start by this year, and it'll probably start by the very beginning of next. So get excited. That's what I'm saying. All right. Well, anyway, thanks you guys for watching. Go ahead and subscribe over here, and then, you know, other videos. Awesome. I'm doing the poll. Vote for the best villain in One Piece. So go check that out over here. Tekking101 signing out. Later, guys.